Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be solving LeetCode 198, which is titled House Robber. This is a medium problem. It's kind of tricky, but it's not that bad once you kind of understand it. Feel free to pause the video just to read through what the problem is asking for, but I find the examples more descriptive. So given an array of numbers where each number represents the amount of money in a house, okay? This 1 is the amount of money in house 1, 2 is the amount of money in house 2, 3 is the amount of money in house 3, and 1 is the amount of money in house 4, okay? You want to rob these houses in such a way you can get as much money as possible, but the catch is you can't rob adjacent houses, meaning if you rob this first house you can't rob the second house, but you can rob every house after that accordingly. So if you rob this third house you can rob the fourth house, okay? And the same, if you rob the second house you can't rob either the first one or the third one, because the alarm systems are rigged in such a way that if you rob adjacent houses it goes off and the cops are gonna come get you, and you don't want the cops to come get you, don't you? But yeah, anyways, let's go ahead and solve this problem. Again, like I said, it's pretty simple once you understand the trick to it. And the trick to it is, so just using this example we have here, we have an example where we're given nums, and nums is something like this. It's an array of 1, 2, 3 and 1, okay? This is nums. So the trick is at every step we're asking ourselves the question, what is, so I'm just going to call a variable called out, just create it, okay? What is the maximum? Okay, I want to know the maximum between the house I'm currently on, okay? So if this is nums, right? This array is nums, and if I'm iterating through nums, each element I'll call him n. The max between n, okay, the house I'm currently on. And before we finish this formula I just started, so we want to create an imaginary array, okay? An imaginary array, okay? He's gonna be mostly the same size as nums, but however he's gonna have 2 new elements in front, initialized to 0 and 0, okay? So we're gonna have a pointer, we're gonna create 2 pointers, right? One is called, I'm gonna name him, say, it doesn't matter what you call him, but I'll call him rob1. This is a scenario where we rob this first house, this house right here. And then the second one is gonna be called rob2, scenario where we rob the second house. Obviously you can't rob1 and rob2 at the same time. You gotta pick which one you rob, right? Because they are adjacent, okay? So initially they're 0, so we want to go through an n in the first iteration is gonna start off here. We want to iterate through nums, get through all the n's, and populate accordingly. And again, like I said, at every step of this iteration we're asking ourselves the question, so what is the maximum I can get between robbing n, which is the current iteration I'm on, plus rob1 or rob2, okay? Meaning when n is right here, as n is right now, you can rob him and you can rob1, but you can't rob2. Or you can choose to rob2, but you can rob n and rob1. But you see what we're trying to do. So let's go through the different iterations of n. Say in the case n is on the first item, n equals 1. Okay, so let's just separate this. So n equals 1. Okay, n is on the first item right now. Rob1, like we said, is gonna be 0. Okay, and rob2 is gonna be 0. Okay, so in this case our variable out, which is what we want to append to this array, is just going to be equal to the maximum of n is 1, plus rob1 is 0, or rob2. In this case the maximum between 1 and 0 is just 1. So we go ahead and append 1 to this array, okay? 1, kind of like we have here, okay? So now once we do this, what happens next? Next we're going to move our rob2. Our rob2 is going to point to this new guy we just created, okay? And rob1 is gonna take the previous value of rob2. Okay, this is all we're trying to do with the code. 1 is gonna take this value. Okay, we're gonna keep doing this to the end. So at this point now we're done with the first iteration of n, right? So we have to update n to the next guy. So now n is pointing towards house 2. And keep in mind, n is the value of money in house 2, not the index. Okay, so now n is pointing towards house 2. So let's go ahead and do the calculation. So n in this case, once it's pointing towards house 2, you can get $2 from that house. Rob1 in this case has updated to the previous value of rob2, which is 0, and rob2 now is the value we calculated, the maximum value we can get from choosing between house 1. So rob2 in this case is 1. So now out, which is what we want to append, is just the same formula, the maximum between n, which is 2, plus rob1, which is 0, or rob2, which is 1. In this case it's 2. Okay, we go ahead and append 2 to this array, second index. Okay, again we go ahead and update all the necessary variables. Okay, so rob 2 points here. Rob 1 takes the previous value of rob 2. Okay, and this is the end of this iteration, right? In the third iteration, n is going to update to the next house. So we want to check. As always, we're asking that same question, but let's go ahead and write out what we have. So in this case, n is now the next house is 3. We can get $3 if we rob this house. Okay, now rob 1 is our previous value of rob 2, which is 1. And rob 2 is the max we calculated, which is 2. Okay, so now we want to ask the same question. What is the maximum between n plus rob 1 and rob 2? In this case is obviously 4, because 3 plus 1 is greater than 2. 4. We go ahead and append 4 to this. Okay, as always, we update on rob 2. Okay, we update the necessary pointers. So rob 2 is now pointing to this guy. Okay, and rob 1 updates to the previous value of rob 2. Okay, so now we're done with this iteration. Now the next iteration, which also happens to be a final iteration, and is at the last house in the yard, in the neighborhood, I guess. Okay, so now let's go ahead and write everything we have. So n in this case is 1, because that's how much money you can get from that last house. Rob 1 is our previous rob 2, which is 2. And rob 2 is our previous max, or our current max actually, which is 4. Okay, so now what do we want to do with this? The same question. Output is just going to be, what's the maximum money I can get between robbing n plus house 1 or just house 2? I say house 2, but the next house. Okay, in this case it's still 4, because 4 is greater than 3, so we go ahead and append 4. Again, as always, we go ahead and update our pointers. Okay, I say pointers in this case, although I'm using variables, but so we go ahead and update rob 2, and now rob 1 is the previous place of rob 2. And then once we're done with this, we just go ahead and obviously we can't update n anymore, because n is going to go out here, which is outside the scope of this array. We just go ahead and return rob 2. So now that we've solved this, let's go ahead and put this solution in code. And it's pretty straightforward. To do this is actually very straightforward, to be honest, and you guys are going to see in 1 second how straightforward it is. So I'm just going to put this on the side, or I can take him out, it's no problem. So first step, like we say, is to create both our variables, right? We want to create rob 1. Since they are both equal, I can just create them like this. Rob 1 equals rob 2 equals 0. Okay, then we want to iterate through our array nums. For n in nums, okay, we want to iterate through everyone in there. Okay, we want to create a temporary variable. Again, we decide we don't want to create the array, a real array, just to conserve memory. We just want to kind of simulate creating an array. So again, we're asking the question, what is the maximum, okay, between n plus the previous 2 houses, the house 2 house away, okay, and the house right before n. Okay, so just so this makes sense, let me go ahead and kind of show you guys what we're doing by code. So pretty much we're creating this array. The first element in this array is going to be rob 1, second is going to be rob 2, but we're not creating the array, we're just simulating creating. Then the next guy is going to be n, then the next guy is going to be n plus 1, the next guy is going to be n plus 2, and he's going to go on however many n is. So if we rob n, we can only rob, if we're at n, we're at the nth house, we can only rob n and rob 1. Okay, that's why we're saying n plus rob 1. However, if that doesn't want to compare, how much do we get if we rob n and rob 1 versus if we just rob 2? That's if we're on n, right? Those are the only 2 choices we have, and we want to maximize it, so we choose the maximum of those. So I'll leave this comment here for now, but I'll take it out later. But now, what do we want to do? Like we said, we want to switch the positions of rob 1 and rob 2. So we just say rob 1 is going to be equal to rob 2. Okay, we're switching the pointers now, and we're just going to say rob 2 is just equal to the maximum we just created, which is 10. And then in the end of this, we want to return rub 2, because that's who's going to hold our final value, just exactly like we said right here in this explanation, right? Just exactly like we said right here. In the end, we return rub 2, and rub 2 is going to have the final. So let's go ahead and submit just to check. Okay, boom. We were accepted faster than 65%, and memory is so awesome. So yeah, so that's it for the video, guys. I hope it was helpful, and I hope we were able to understand what's going on with this problem, and I'll see you guys in the next one.